It just says welcome to my live, but that's because it's attached to the video that I just uploaded.
Ah.
I'm in D2.
Yeah. Oh, nice. They're the streaming league.
Yeah, they have streaming leagues, and it affects the margin of pay that you get.
Oh my god.
It's like so gamified. It's
Ranked
crazy.
Competitive live streaming.
Yes, it is ranked. TikTok has
so
ranked
funny.
competitive live streaming. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. I hope you're coming from the Monster Hunter video, or not. If you're just also coming from wherever, please hit me with your lovely science questions, and ask about ask about dinosaurs. A little bit about. Oh. Oh yeah, what's your question?
I have Monster Hunter things I want to talk about.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what it was.
What
yeah.
is this?
So you were saying that Dapper Wings are a Scansoriopterid.
Yes.
Where do woodland pteryxes fall from World?
Woodland pteryxes are almost certainly Troodontids. They look
Really?
Yeah, they look really similar to stuff like Anchiornis.
Huh.
They're incredibly, like, as far as I'm aware, they're much more closer to being the true birds.
Yeah.
Because if you
definitely are much closer to true birds.
If you look here, they have pretty much all the traits of a true bird. They have feather-powered wings and not membrane-powered wings.
Interesting.
And I would wager that the sacred is probably
Great
somewhere
woodland
there.
pteryx.
Yeah.
That's a good name for them.
God, let the dinosaurs die because there was no space in the Ark. Well, that probably makes about as much sense as the Ark model.
Video, right?
Nope, not yet. I think it
Got
messed
it.
up. Don't be so rash.
Well, I want to upload the other one.
How do I upload a video? Create, upload video. Select files.
Well, you need to download it first. It hasn't finished downloading.
But this one has.
Oh. Okay, yeah, no, that's the only one that I uploaded because I didn't have space on my drive.
Okay.
I'm gonna delete
Yeah, wait,
that video.
one second.
You already downloaded it.
But I don't know if I uploaded the right files. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Yes, we're good.
All right.
Yeah. If everybody hangs out for a second, which I know is a difficult thing to ask in this day and age, but I am going to start talking about a literature review that I did recently regarding causes of the end Permian extinction and the Cretaceous anoxic events, which is a lot. I know, I understand. But in the meantime, if anybody wants to shoot any questions at me, I would be more than happy to answer them. Or just, what's your favorite dinosaur? Hello, Lesbian Dirkstrider. Are dinosaurs giant chickens? No, but chickens are smaller than average sized dinosaurs. Not all dinosaurs are chickens, but some dinosaurs are chickens because chickens are dinosaurs, if that makes sense. It's like alligators and crocodilians. All alligators are crocodilians, but not all crocodilians are alligators.
Video is uploading. Gotta get more clickbaity.
How do you feel about Bepiausaurus? I love it. I played a lot of Bepiausaurus in the Isle when it came out.
Can I do something to make it?
What was the smallest sauropod, Lesbian Dirkstrider? It depends on what you define as sauropod. Eoraptor lunensis.
There you go.
Eoraptor lunensis is like a sauropodomorph, and it's super teeny tiny, but it's also not like a true sauropod per se. However, some of the later sauropods, they did get really small, like Magyarosaurus, for instance, is teeny tiny because it lived on an island. Is Ankylosaurus and Stegosaurus, is there a way the Ankylosaurus is cooler? Ankylosaurus is really cool for a lot of reasons. My favorite thing about the Ankylosaurus being cool would have to be the fact that it has bones in its eyelids. That's like really the scary ankylosaur thing. Like that's unique and super cool. And a couple of the other ankylosaurs have them, but Stegosaurus doesn't have anything close. Do you think Dracorex is a juvenile Pachycephalosaurus? Yeah, I do. I think it's not necessarily the same species as Pachycephalosaurus like Spinifer or Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis, but it is definitely a Pachycephalosaurus, and it doesn't deserve to be in its own genus. Pachycephalosaurus is really cool. Where did you study paleontology? I currently study paleontology in college, and so I'm not going to give away the name of my institution because I want to protect a little bit of my privacy. But I'm currently an undergrad, and I work at my local museum doing research into bird evolution, and I also do some stuff in the paleontology lab, doing fossil preparation and helping with research on extinct fish.
Would the T-Rex consider a human being a food source? Probably if you were close enough to it.
If you were close enough to the point where it would give it more energy to eat you than it would cost to hunt you, then yes. And that distance gets longer the younger the T-Rex is, to a degree, because tyrannosaurs eat prey of different sizes as they age. It's called ontogenetic niche partitioning. And it's something we actually observe among tristichoterid fish in the Devonian as well, where younger tristichoterids will go after certain species of placoderms that the adults don't go after.
Yeah, wasn't Tyrannosaurus Rex kind of dominant over a lot of
stuff
in that area?
And it's not as extreme with tristichoterids. What is your favorite Monster Hunter monster? That is not off topic, Lesbian Dirkstrider. Are there any modern animals that do ontogenetic niche partitioning? I will look into that. My favorite Monster Hunter monster right now... That is a difficult question.
There are like 4 that I would guess would be your favorite.
I love Jindahad and Raydao. Raydao and Jindahad are up there. They're really incredible designs from Wilds. And Lagiacrus is probably in number 3. I love Lagiacrus also. What weapon do you use? I use the greatsword because it's just like the scalpel I use for dissecting real-life specimens, but way, way bigger.
Yeah, it's a Monster Hunter-sized scalpel.
I really miss Brachydios. Brachydios is awesome. Yeah, Raydao is awesome.
God, Raging Brachy would be so good in Wilds. Just with how many explosions there are and like all the movement tech, it would be so good.
Yeah.
Dive in X, I also play Hammer.
Hammer's awesome.
Exclusively. Do you know the paleo artist Brian Eng?
I love Brian Eng. I'm a huge Brian Eng head. I love Brian Eng so much. He's one of my favorite paleo artists. And I almost ran into him at AAAS in, I think, 2020, which is the year that it was supposed to be in Philly, and I was going to also go to Philly. I wasn't living in Philly at the time. But I was going to make it up to Philly because I was doing a little talk about hold on. What?
What? That's crazy. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
That's awesome.
That's insane. Yes, Sluggy
That's
Logan.
so cool.
Yes, birds are dinosaurs, but not all dinosaurs are birds. Okay. Were they birds? Not all dinosaurs were birds, but all birds are dinosaurs. So some of them, yes. But how do we know they had scales and not feathers? Some of them have both. Modern birds have both scales and feathers. Dinosaurs, in a lot of cases, also have both scales and feathers. A lot of the dinosaurs most closely related to birds have scaly feet, just like modern birds, but they also have feathered bodies. We know this because they have, fully preserved body fossils. Yes, exactly like a sacred. And then we also have some dinosaurs that have preserved scaly body fossils and very few feathers, if any at all. There's the impression... Yes, there are impressions in certain fossils and also amber-trapped dinosaurs with feathers. Best depiction of dinosaurs you've seen in media? I really, really like Prehistoric Planet's everything, particularly their Machikosaurus, which I'm a little bit jealous of because for some time I was the owner of the most well-researched and most up-to-date Machikosaurus design, model, whatever. And then Prehistoric came out just a few months later after I did that. it's kind of cool to find a really obscure dinosaur and do a really well researched and updated reconstruction of it, because yours will remain on top if it's accurate enough for some time. But Prehistoric Planet really stole my thunder for that one.
To the person asking if Carnotaurus, I assume,
Yeah.
had feathers, or if it was a reptile, they were reptiles. I don't know if they had feathers,
They
though.
probably didn't have feathers from what we know of. There are some preserved skin impressions of Carnotaurus, but none of them include feathers.
But all dinosaurs are reptiles.
Yeah. All dinosaurs are reptiles. Why did crocodiles revert back to cold-bloodedness? They didn't really. They're facultative endotherms. There are two people in chat with with GI Robot as their profile
we were
picture.
Talking about GI Robot.
I love
last
GI
night.
Robot.
I love GI Robot. Fantastic character.
Yeah. Tell me about Halscaraptor. Halscaraptor is interesting. It's a dromaeosaur. Specifically, it is, I think, it's in its own subfamily within Dromaeosauridae. It's a Halscaraptorine. And it is very interesting to me because it's convergent on my main group of study of dinosaurs, the Anseriformes, or the Galloanseres. So Halscaraptor in particular has this really long, flat skull. It looks a lot like a duck. And it was recovered from the late Cretaceous I knew it was from Mongolia. I knew it in my heart. All the cool fossils are from Mongolia. I want to go to Mongolia. Anyway, Halscaraptor is generally thought to be at least aquatic, like water adjacent. It's known to be a dromaeosaurid because all of the bones are articulated together. There was talk about it being a chimerasaur, or a chimerasaur between, not chimera, a chimerasaur, just a chimera between a dinosaur and or like a non-avian dinosaur and like a natid or like some goose-like bird. But that is pretty invalid considering that, all the bones in the holotype are connected, and it's pretty definitively a dinosaur, or a non-avian dinosaur. It's up in the air whether or not it's up in the air whether or not it would really truly be semi-aquatic, because generally speaking, dinosaur morphology is not very well suited to swimming in the water. However, there are a lot of modern birds today that do get in the water with some difficulty, and the main bar is submerging. Dinosaurs are actually quite good at floating on top of the water, so that's probably the most accurate ecological position for Halscaraptor, is either being a shoreline wader or swimming on top of the water, just not diving, because diving requires a lot of specializations that it is debated whether they appear in Halscaraptor.
There is some conversation going on in chat about dinosaurs and also crocodiles being either cold or warm-blooded.
Yeah. So reptiles can have feathers, and how do we know what their skin is like? Their skin fossilizes, because dinosaurs are within reptilia, they're going to be reptiles. You can't evolve out of a group that you're part of. No matter what traits a reptile evolves, it will remain a reptile. So crocodiles are not cold-blooded. The whole term of warm and cold-blooded is kind of strange, because what it really is just referring to is not a diagnostic trait. It's just the tendency of an organism to be the same or different temperature of an organism relative to its environment. So some crocodiles were warm-blooded all the time in the past. There's evidence of ancient crocodilians being active predators that needed those high metabolisms and be able to move all of the time. But there is also, among modern crocodiles, some of them do have the ability to, regulate their temperature. And because some of them are still secondarily endothermic, and phylogenetic bracketing suggests that they would be or endotherms. Is Krylovosaurus the only theropod dinosaur discovered in Antarctica? I don't believe so. I just looked up Antarctica and not Antarctica dinosaurs. There are...
Is there another one called Glaciosaurus?
Yes, there is a dinosaur called
great.
Glaciosaurus. I know that there was a lot of faunal exchange between Antarctica and Australia. And so I really would not be surprised to see. Yeah, so Australovenator, Ozraptor, um, and the recently discovered Australian dinosaurs might have made it into Antarctica. Have we ever found any kind of dinosaur frozen in the ice? No, because the Earth entered a. Oh my gosh! Thank you for the hand heart. I very much appreciate that so much. Thank you. Um, no, because there hasn't been a consistent enough climate to ensure permafrost that has existed since the Mesozoic. We are currently in an interglacial period. If we leave the ice age that we're in, most, if not all, of the permafrost that exists right now will be gone. Um, Thylacoleo carnifex is very cool. Do you think they tasted like chicken? The chickens do, definitely, and they're dinosaurs. But yeah, I do think dinosaurs probably tasted a bit like fowl. So technically they're endothermic, but for time and need, but usually they just remain ectothermic. Yeah, their crocodiles are either ectothermic or mesothermic. There is debate about how much we can consider them endotherms or mesotherms, but it is consensus that crocodiles, because they're ambush predators that don't need a super high metabolism, are significantly less endothermic than their ancestors. Do you know what dinosaurs have been found in Alabama? Let's check it out. Dun, dun, dun. Looks like no Precambrian fossils, some Devonian, marine crinoids from the Pennsylvanian, Exogyra, aha! So it looks like the only remnants of a dinosaur within Alabama, because it was underwater during the Mesozoic, were hadrosaur bits that were found in what was then the ocean that had been eaten by a bunch of sharks, which are called squalocorax. They were a big Mesozoic shark that was apparently commonly found in Alabama. Their teeth were, at least. And I don't know if this is the same one, but no. Okay. Clausaurus is described from Kansas, but it was a hadrosaur similar to the one that was found in Alabama with shark teeth in it. Would there be land dinosaur bones in Indiana? Where is Indiana? I think that's north of the Western Interior Seaway. So I would not be surprised. Da, 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 da. There is a fossil record gap.
For the entire Mesozoic era.
Yeah, so okay. It was on land, but it was too far on land. There were definitely dinosaurs in Indiana, but because it was...
So it was a...
it was more upland. It was not...
erosive
Yes,
environment.
it was an erosive environment from the Permian up through the Mesozoic. So we don't get any Permian or Mesozoic fossils from Indiana, unfortunately.
There has been a person asking about IDing a piece of sauropod fossil that they got for like the last 10 minutes.
Okay, how do I ID a species of dinosaur from a piece of fossil? All I know is it's a sauropod. That requires a lot of questions. The first one is, where did you find it? And
they bought it, I think.
If they bought it, okay. Then I would suggest definitely taking it to a sauropod expert, because without knowing where it came from, I really have nothing to say to that. Because you gotta really know what strata it came from if you're not very into the taxonomy of that specific group. Let me check. Welcome up, Lesbian Dirk Strider. Hello, Lesbian Dirk Strider.
Hello. I have
Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so my first one is, I've mentioned before that I'm near like the North Carolina museum. Have you like heard the fossil that they found there, that they have there, of like the two dinosaurs that are like interlocked and they don't really know exactly what happened to them? The
dueling dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Tyrannos. It's a young Tyrannosaurus and a Triceratops. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can I ask like what your opinion is on what you think happened to them? Like, because I think that they were probably fighting when they were fossilized because of things like the like tooth marks that were found, I think, embedded in the it wasn't like there was damage to some of the skull of the Tyrannosaur, I think, and also the spine of the Triceratops. Was
Yeah.
it?
Um, that's there is certainly the I would have to probably go see it and then talk to some of the researchers to really get a strong opinion on it. But it's not completely unheard of that one or both of them could die um, after a violent interaction and leave that sort of fossil behind. I mean, we have the dueling dinosaurs from Mongolia as well, with the Velociraptor and Protoceratops that absolutely died at the same time because they were caught in a sandstorm or something of the sort. I don't know a ton about the depositional environment that would have created the North Carolina dueling dinosaurs fossil, but I definitely will get a stronger opinion on that when I go there and see it. I just don't know much about the specific specimen at the moment. But I would expect if there's damage to both of them and they died around the same time, that probably something similar to the Mongolian dueling dinosaur specimen would be what occurred, um, where it's two animals that are either attempting to or one of them has successfully killed the other, and then a sandstorm or landslide rapidly buries them immediately afterward.
Yeah. I was curious about that because, like, when I had gone to see the exhibit there, they were talking about how it could have also been like a flood that killed them because there was like evidence that the area had like flooded, like right before they died.
Yes, yeah,
Mhm.
that's certainly also possible. That would be a solution for the problem of like a rapid depositional environment that would result in these sort of fossils being formed. Like flash floods are a really
Mhm.
good way to rapidly preserve animals.
Right. And I have a second question. What do you think was the coolest like prehistoric invertebrate?
I am really, really, really a big fan of probably. Well, here's the thing. I'm trying to pick something from that I've like held personally. Because I am always a big fan of fossils that I like know. I'm doing air quotes. Um, I really, really like Anomalocaris. The museum that I work at has an Anomalocaris specimen, and it's super cool. But
Ooh, I want to see that.
yeah, but I really also love Pterygotus. It's a giant Eurypterid from I think it's Devonian. It might be earlier, but Pterygotus is like the Eurypterids. I don't know how. Do you know anything about Eurypterids?
Not really.
Okay, so Eurypterids are a group of chelicerate arthropods from that range from like the Ordovician up through the Devonian, pretty much. I think there were some in the Carboniferous, but I'm not sure. They might have gone extinct. And they look a lot like scorpions. They're pretty closely related to scorpions. But they don't have stingers, and their last two digits, instead of being like traditional limbs, are like big paddles because they swim. And the end of their tail is also flattened into a paddle for swimming. And they're super, super cool. Pterygotus in particular contains many, many species, um, but one of which is like 5 feet long. And we don't have an actual Pterygotus specimen at the museum that I work at, but we do have a giant life-size painting of a Pterygotus that was made by the paleo artist Jason Shine when he was there.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they're
Have
super cool.
a, have a great day.
You also. Thanks for coming by.
You're welcome.
The person with the sauropod fossil said that it was from the Morrison Formation.
Morrison Formation, shoot, that's actually an area that I have a decent amount of experience in. There's a few Morrison sauropods.
They said it was a pretty small fossil.
Well, is it a vertebrae or a vertebra?
I don't know. I think they were saying it was probably from a small sauropod.
Okay, well, sauropods grow very quickly,
Yeah.
and we get sauropods of all ages from the Morrison. If it was from the Mother's Day quarry, it would certainly be a Diplodocus. Diplodocus is probably the most likely because they're the most abundant sauropod in the Morrison, but Camarasaurus are also fairly common. Um, I doubt it's from any of the
Oh,
super,
it's part of
super.
the leg, and the joint fits in their hand.
Okay, we probably the most abundant juvenile Morrison sauropods are Diplodocus.
Would that be, is the Mother's Day site there?
Yeah, the Mother's Day site has loads of juvenile Diplodocus. And so that's like a reliable spot to find them. They're they're pretty common around the Morrison, and the size of their bones obviously varies a lot with age because when Diplodocus hatch, they're incredibly small, and then they get big, but they also have high mortality rates. Um, so yeah, I would wager Diplodocus. If I had to put money on a specific Morrison sauropod, I would say that your bone probably belongs to a young Diplodocus. It's also possible that it belongs to a Suuasia, um, or a Camarasaurus. But I would have to, really see it and familiarize myself with diagnosing Morrison sauropod fossils because they're a little bit outside of my purview. Most of the stuff I know about identifying Morrison sauropods has to do with field work where we have more than one bone to go off of. Um, and so identifying a single bone would be a little bit difficult for me. Thanks. To Discord, I can send a pic. You can DM me on TikTok and I'll send you my Discord. Diplodocus. Yeah, Diplodocus is awesome. What dinosaur do you think has been the most confusing for paleontologists? Definitely Chaleosaurus. Chaleosaurus is still really, really up for debate on where it is. It is a dinosaur that looks a ton like the earliest dinosaurs from like the mid-Triassic, but it's found in the late Middle Jurassic. So it's like, is this thing convergent? Was there just a group of dinosaurs that never really changed physiologically? And but they did change because they're different than the earliest dinosaurs, just not superficially. And so it's unclear if Chaleosaurus is convergent or if it's divergent or even if it's a Saurischian or an Ornithischian. Massive, you can like tap on my profile picture. Live is choppy for me. Okay, please everyone, let me know in chat if you can hear me. Okay, I'm very sorry if the audio is bad. Most confusing has to be Spinosaurus. Not really. We know where Spinosaurus sits taxonomically. We just don't know what it looks like that much. What dinosaur do you think has changed the most, as in what paleontologists thought before now? Almost certainly Scrotum humanum or Megalosaurus. When Scrotum humanum, which is the name of the specimen, was initially discovered, it was the bottom of a femur of Megalosaurus, and someone thought it was the petrified genitalia of a giant ape. And so, yeah, are you Dryptosaurus? I can't click the guy on the live. I am Dryptosaurus, yes. Live is good on my end. Okay, that's great to hear. Yes, crocodiles are ectothermic, but they can use some of their energy to increase their body temperature. Thank you. I really appreciate that, JP. The MH series will continue. I'm just putting out probably one video a day as a consistent schedule because any more would burn me out, and I feel like any less I would be making more of those entries than I can record for. I'm very sorry about that, Divinex. If you just to put your worries to rest, if you want to click off the stream, you will still be able to see all this for sure on YouTube after it gets uploaded.
Yes.
I'm learning so many new things about dinosaurs I've never heard of. That's great to hear. Who's experienced guys on?
Just
thank you, Divinex.
For a second.
Guys on.
Just
thank you, Divinex.
For a second.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, yeah. Maybe that works.
Hopefully.
What's your take on Eoraptors? Personally, they're my favorite of the family.
Yeah, it's flickering a little.
Shoot, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what's up with that. Are you on the Wi-Fi?
I am on the Wi-Fi. Okay. Do you think there could have been other species of Spinosaurids with sails? Definitely. I mean, depending on how broad you want to get with your definition, Suchomimus and Irritator probably had sails. We just don't have super complete vertebrae. Yeah. What's your take on Eoraptors? I love Eoraptor. I'm a fan of Sauropodomorph Eoraptor. I think it makes a lot of sense just because of like the small skull in proportion to the body and the general limb anatomy. What's something about dinosaurs the everyday person wouldn't know?
I would say that we know what the color some of them were, because that's kind
Yeah.
of a good go-to.
Yeah, a lot of people think, well, a lot of the public thinks that scientists have a better idea of what dinosaurs sounded like than we actually do, and a worse idea of what they looked like than what we actually do.
Yeah.
We don't know jack about how most dinosaurs sounded. There are two species with even any data on what kind of noise they would have been able to produce. However, we have pretty extensive data on dinosaur colors and the kinds of pigment they were able to produce, either through their feathers or through like structural coloration or anything like that. Yeah, we have the trachea of what's it called? Panachosaurus. Were a lot of dinosaurs super colorful? Yeah, they had some really interesting contrasting body colorations. Niche Turkey Boy, there is definitely more time between Stegosaurus and T-Rex than between T-Rex and us. That's a big one. Will you post any more streams on YouTube? Yes. They're all in a playlist on my YouTube account. They're unlisted, but if you click on the stream archive on my YouTube, you should be able to see it.
We are also editing together some things from the streams and putting those up as videos. But yeah, if you want to watch the full stream, those are in the playlist.
Yeah. If you like go to my YouTube channel and hit playlist, you should be able to. Yeah, you should just be able to see it. And then I'll probably make a playlist for the Monster Hunter one at some point. One dinosaur had stripy tails. Yes, Sinosauropteryx had. They were like real panaceous feathers. Because Microraptor was a dromaeosaur. Do you friend me on Discord? I will after my live. But yeah, because I'm gonna have to either send that to someone who reads more papers than I do, or read some papers to really get an idea on that. So that likely won't happen. I won't get back to you on a strong ID for a while. How come you study something you've never seen before? I see dinosaurs every day, both extinct and recently deceased. Birds are dinosaurs because Dinosauria is a taxonomic category that is defined not based on the time an organism lived, but on the morphology of its skeleton. And surprise, surprise, birds have skeletons that include all of the necessary. Surprise, surprise, birds have skeletons that include all of the necessary traits required to be considered a dinosaur. Therefore, birds are dinosaurs. And I see dinosaurs every day when I pull into work, both when I, walk there and I see pigeons flying, including birds, aside from clades. It is just clades. Reptilia is a clade. The diagnostic traits for that clade are as follows. I will try and find them. I can list the ones off for Dinosauria off the top of my head, but most of these clades have... that is not true. That is absolutely not true.
Oh, that is definitely not true.
Okay. Reptilia.
Commonly defined.
Morphology and physiology.
Let's see. Waffle syrups. Dinosaurs were all over the place. They were on every continent, as far as I know.
Yeah, Evan Boy Jane. What do you mean by dinosaurs aren't real? If you're willing to define what a dinosaur is, then I can explain to you either how it is real or how your definition is false. What type of a hybrid you would make if you worked at Jurassic World? Dinosaurs are conspiracy theories made up by the government. That's not a definition. That is a proposed attribute. Yes, even Antarctica.
Yep, there are... I think we were talking about it earlier. There are at least 2 dinosaurs that I know of from Antarctica.
There are loads of dinosaurs in Antarctica.
Yeah, Antarctica was not where it is now. It was, I believe, farther north during the Mesozoic, and so it was much warmer.
Yeah.
If you could bring back a dinosaur and be able to observe them alive and up close safely, which one would you choose?
Acrocanthosaurus.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So generally, reptile is homogeneous with Sauropsida, or Reptilia. Sauropsida, or Reptilia. in terms of the cladistic definitions, it's just the things that are commonly referred to as reptiles plus birds and everything in between. Trying to look at the actual. Yay! Thank you, James, for the tiny diamond. That's awesome,
Someone
Skyder
watching
Raccoon.
the stream just realized that you're the person who's making the Monster Hunter videos.
I am in fact the person who's making the Monster Hunter videos. You should go check out the one I just did about Dapper Wings. What should you include? Definitely include more basic information than you would want to. I'm sure if you're decently into paleontology, you have a massively, as I do too, a massively inflated idea of what the average person knows about dinosaurs. Most people do not know what a dinosaur is. Straight up. They are not even aware of taxonomy, and that's not their fault. It's not taught. It's very easy information to access, but it's not information that a lot of people seek out. Also, after you live, I have some questions about the colors of my fossils. Sure. Media's fault, for sure. We need to talk more about dinosaurs, but do you like stegosaurs? I do. I worked on a stegosaurus a couple years back. It was really fun. It was a fossil assemblage in the Morrison Formation. I mean, broadly, reptiles are just anything that is an amniote that excludes synapsids, which are the animals with a single temporal fenestrate behind their eyes. So sauropsids are those with the two temporal fenestrae, which is pretty broad, but that's what a reptile is basically. Are you happy with Allosaurus anax? I'm happy with kind of whatever scientific consensus is. I don't think we should really be naming anything off the Saurophaganax holotype because it's super fragmentary. Unrelated, but why do you think people still believe in God? I think, broadly, a lot of religion is a consequence of upbringing, and it is a fairly important part of a lot of different cultures. Yeah. I'm calling a monster in the new Repo game Thagomizer because the weapon reminds me of Stegotail. Excellent.
And that is the actual term for the thing on the end of the Stegosaurus's tail. So, yeah.
Gilbert Mays. They're dragons, guys. What do you mean by dragon? Do you want to define a dragon? How big were Carnotaurus's horns? Significantly larger than the bone. Oh, J.K. Allard. I said I think people probably believe in God generally as a consequence of both their culture and upbringing. And I think religion is a fairly important part of a lot of different cultures, and so it's very highly valued. And I don't think it's inherently evil or anything. But I think it is generally a consequence of cultures. Carnotaurus's horns were definitely larger than the bone. How much larger is up for debate. We don't have any fossil material that suggests huge keratin things, but dragons are not in the Bible. The term dragon gets used, but I don't think it ever really describes a dragon. There are people who say that dinosaurs are in the Bible, and that all the things the Bible talks about that are dragons are dinosaurs. So, Chaos Theory, really? Oh, maybe I should look at what is in the Chaos Theory Season 3 trailer.
I have heard about Chaos Theory twice. Is that
It's a animated Jurassic Park spinoff show.
Oh, cool.
Okay, let's do our analysis. I'm watching this on mute. Okay. Kentrosaurus. That's cool. That's interesting and exciting. What do you think about the new scientific model of the Spino in 2025? I think it's good. I think it'll change significantly with Nizari Rahim's new paper. I don't know, J.K. Allard. I really don't know.
I mean, there's been a steady decline, I believe, in participation in religion and things like that. In terms of active participation, but I don't think.
But there was also a steady decline.
We'll ever really see a complete absence of practice or belief in religion, because it's such a long-standing and like part of human society and way people interact with each other and have community. So I just don't think that's something that will ever
Oh shoot,
really
what
go
animal is
away.
that? Oh, it's a Ceratosaurus in the Chaos Theory trailer. But yeah, and that's Pachycephalosaurus spinifer or Stygimoloch. That's a Baryonyx. That's the Ceratosaurus again. That guy's doing squats. I have no context for all of this. I also have a Hadrosaur tibia end,
That's cool.
and then it's in a box in my house.
Oh, you know what the best dinosaurs are? The ones in
The little ones that fly in by your nose.
No,
Ooh.
I was gonna say the best dinosaurs are the ones in Scooby-Doo Legend of the Phantosaur.
I don't know if you used Philo XML code, but if so, do you have to add no lines for each attribute? I have never used Philo XML. I only use R. Yeah, sorry about that. I can't really help you with Philo XML questions. What would your opinion be if there was a bigger Carnotaurus? I don't know about Carnotaurus specifically. I mean, I imagine there were Carnotaurus individuals that exist larger than the ones we have preserved, or the one we have preserved. There are also large abelisaurids that are undescribed from Africa that might be closely related to Carnotaurus. Name every dinosaur. Ostrich, Reyes, Cassowaриds.
Oh no, you can't just go over groups. You gotta go species by species.
Okay.
Full binomial name for each one.
Fine. Struthio andersoni, Struthio barbarus, Struthio cacensis, Struthio asiaticus, Struthio capensi, Struthio orlov, Struthio womeni, Struthio molybdophanes, Struthio camelus. This is going to take forever. That was just genus Struthio. Favorite Dinobot and Transformers? Grimlock. I love Grimlock. My favorite Transformer in general is Predaking, though. Your MH passion is amazing. Thank you so much. I love Monster Hunter.
Monster Hunter is so good.
Do you ever do animation drawings like doodles or just still images? Nah, I just do still stuff. I tried animating once when I was in 7th grade because I thought I was going to be the next big Storytime YouTuber like Jaden Animations.
Oh my god, I did the same thing.
Yeah, and I had a little like PNG tuber that I made that was a bat, and my whole gimmick was going to be that I was a bat and I would hang from the ceiling and do the exact same thing as everybody else, but the video would be upside down.
God, I really need to go find my cat lamp VTuber that I made.
Thank you for the donut. Oh my gosh, thank you, Divinex, so much. You're very awesome. I really do appreciate it. Would dragons be considered a dinosaur? No, because dragon is not a taxonomic term. You would have to have the thing you're calling a dragon have very specific attributes to make it a dinosaur. And then at that point, because it's taxonomically defined, it wouldn't be a dragon because dragons are like almost definitionally fantasy creatures. Which Predaking, the dragon one or the combiner one? The dragon Predaking. I watched a lot of Transformers Prime when I was younger, and I loved Predaking in that show. He was so cool. Do you think the unidentified teeth in the Chem beds are abelisaurids or raptors? Considering there's already a lot of abelisaurid material around the Chem, I would not put another species of abelisaurid being like they're out the window. However, it's also certainly possible they're dromaeosaurs or an assemblage of both. Teeth are not very diagnostic for reptiles in general because they're not heterodont. So a small tooth is not necessarily diagnostic of a small animal. It could just be a growing in tooth or a tooth in the back of the mouth or a tooth in the front of the mouth. Yeah, you can't have genuine fossils in every single museum, but there are a lot of museums that mount real fossils. For example, I know the Field Museum certainly mounts some. There's also tons of fossils mounted in the Smithsonian that are real. There is some really, really strict verification of fossils. All the evidence that people, and I say evidence in quotes, all the evidence that people have of paleontologists being gullible is almost always stuff that was found out as fraudulent by a paleontologist the second it was presented seriously and considered a fossil by someone who is paleontology adjacent and not actually a qualified paleontologist. For example, we know the Piltdown Man is fake, not because the guy who made it came out and said it was fake, but because paleontologists and dentists got together and identified that the teeth were placed in the jaw in an unnatural way. We know Archaeoraptor is fake, not because the guy who faked Archaeoraptor came out and said that it was fake, but because paleontologists got together and identified that the guy who was trying to get Archaeoraptor into a museum had assembled a hodgepodge of fossils that he purchased for about $500 million, not 500 million, $500,000 from China. How do we know how big dinosaurs are if we haven't seen a full skeleton? We have a full skeleton of several dinosaurs, but for the biggest dinosaurs, they are mostly fragmentary. What we can do then is we can use either comparative sizing. So we take the full skeletons that we do have and look at the size of the bones we have on the biggest ones and compare them. The other way is long bone sizing, where if you have a femur, you can calculate how much weight that femur could hold, and then you get a mass estimate for the large dinosaur.
There was someone asking for saying they were having trouble understanding how large dinosaurs are and asking for a good comparison.
Okay. So the largest theropods, which are like your big Carcharodontosaurians, and Tyrannosaurus, of course, are very large. Giganotosaurus in particular is about 45 feet long. If you were a person, you could look straight across you and you would be looking at the fingernails of its very small arms. Its knee would be about as tall as your head. Origin of beaks in avian theropods, or was it herbivory like other dinosaurs? Other parabies lack them. It's possible that the beaks were an adaptation for either more seed or bug eating. Additionally, a lot of ornithologists that I have talked to are of the opinion that beaks emerged in Parabians not as a transition to a method of eating food, particularly because beaks can tackle just about any food you throw at them. Even folivory, there are beaked animals that don't have any teeth and they still eat plants like hoatzins. But they're adapted for weight reduction because a beak can be about as efficient as a series of teeth for eating, and it can be 10 times more efficient than a series of teeth for flying because they're much lighter. Hello, Miles. What's your question?
So my question is, I'm curious why no six-limbed vertebrae have been found, or like
Well, we do have six-limbed vertebrates. They're just not terrestrial. So, like, for example, yeah, coelacanths. Pretty much, like, a ton of the jawed fish have, like, multiple series of limbs. I don't know if they have paired caudal fins, actually. But in general, it just seems to be... actually, now that I look at it... No, coelacanths have a single caudal fin. They're not paired. But in terms of looking at the stuff that has adapted onto land, there are certainly vertebrates that exist that have limb-like structures that could be derived into proper limbs. But tetrapods just kind of occupy all of the terrestrial niches, and there would be no reason for a non-terrestrial vertebrate to try and adapt into those tetrapod land niches. You would have to have a almost total mass extinction of terrestrial vertebrate life to pressure a six-limbed chordate to try and go onto land.
Okay, cool. And like hypothetically, if that did happen, wouldn't it sort of just evolve into a tetrapod? Because I don't see it keeping like six limbs if it has to become terrestrial.
Yeah, it's certainly possible that, like, for example, like a ray fin fish with two bundles of, like, most of the things that I'm looking at that appear to be, like, quote, like six-limbed are really ray fin fishes with, like, partitioned fins that like kind of appear to have three sets of fins on their underbody because their fins are like split. But yeah, there is not much of a benefit to having so many limbs. Arthropods are interesting because it's very easy for arthropods to gain and lose limbs because they have a certain amount of limbs associated with each body segment as they're developing. So the cloning of a certain gene can result in an arthropod with an extra set of limbs fairly easily. Vertebrate limbs are so much more complex that I don't really see a reason for having more than 4 because of the developmental cost and also the incredibly difficult cost to re-evolve a functioning vertebrate limb.
Okay, cool. It's a sort of related question. Does a tail count as a limb?
Not really. Usually when I'm talking about limbs, or anything of this sort, it's like a movable, anything of this sort, it's like a movable, structure that is reflected in some way by symmetry.
Okay.
Um, yeah, a tail also is made up of the vertebrae, so it's kind of just part of the backbone rather than being a limb.
All right. Well, thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, of course. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I just found a perfect accessory for my Palico cosplay.
That's fun. Did Concavinator have a fat hump to fill the gap between sails from the back and tail? I am not super aware of any osteological correlates on Concavinator. I've not read a lot about it. That might be plausible. It's also possible there is some kind of display structure there or a stretch of skin. Generally, when we're thinking about reptiles, they deposit fat in different ways than mammals do, and it's not super useful for reptiles to have layers of insulating fat on them. Like usually reptiles kind of deposit fat in globs on their body rather than uniformly over their skin in the way where they would need a fat hump. Welcome up the round penguin. Voltaire, probably the most applicable stuff for marine biology that you could use for paleontology is like paleoclimate reconstruction. There's a lot of paleontologists who study like diatom fossils, and use them to reconstruct paleo environments. All right, the round penguin, what's your question?
Were there any dinosaurs that like to like collect rocks or little treasures?
That is a difficult question to ask because preserved like behavior indicating fossils are highly rare. We do know that a lot of dinosaurs put rocks in their mouth, and that's because associated with some kinds of dinosaur fossils, we find what are called gastroliths, which are stones that were swallowed by an animal and then remained in their stomach for long enough to become smooth. And so we know that a lot of the rocks that we see surrounding dinosaur fossils are the shape and size that they are because they were eaten by a dinosaur when it was younger and just remained in its stomach for basically its entire life.
Well, I do have a second question.
Sure, go ahead.
You know birds?
I do know birds. I'm
How
familiar.
they're, like, the descendants of dinosaurs? Yeah. Does that mean that, like, pterodactyls would have had more of a jaw or they have more of a beak?
So birds are dinosaurs. First of all, when you descend, I'm not saying you don't think this, but birds are dinosaurs because that's how cladistics works. You don't
I
evolve.
don't know how to explain things. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're so fine. You're so fine. I'm explaining this mostly for people in the audience rather than for you, to ensure that everybody can follow along. So birds are dinosaurs because if you evolve from something, you remain in that group. Pterosaurs, like the Pterodactylus or its relatives, are not dinosaurs. Their wings are supported in a different way to birds. Instead of having 3 fused digits and an alula, in birds they have 1 free digit and either 2 or 3 fused digits in the wing.
So it'd be more like a bat.
Yeah, pterosaurs have wings that are structured like a bat, but the membrane of the wing, that like piece of skin, attaches just to their pinky finger, and it runs from their pinky to their ankle. And so pterosaurs are fairly closely related to birds, but they evolved beaks independently. Pterosaurs and birds both, the hypothesis is they both lost their teeth because teeth are heavy and beaks are light. Beaks are generally made out of a keratin rhampotheca, where teeth are made out of bone and enamel, and those are both really heavy. And if you want to be a successful flying animal, you cut down on weight as quickly as possible because those are calories that you don't need to burn to live. So yeah, the beaks of pterosaurs and birds are convergent. They're not. They don't share a beaked ancestor.
Well, thank you. Those are all my questions for now. Bye.
Of course. Thank you, the round penguin.
Let's see. There was someone who asked a little bit ago if dinosaurs are part of reptiles. Yes, dinosaurs are reptiles, as are all of the things descended from them.
Yes. All right. We got up.
Oh, yes.
Do you have any proof dinosaurs are real?
I do. So first of all, what do you think a dinosaur is?
A demon.
Okay. So what is a demon taxonomic? What is a demon taxonomically?
An evil being sent by Satan.
Okay. How would you tell if you found like the bones of an animal that it was or wasn't a demon?
Radiology dating.
So dating is not
Carbon dating is fake.
okay, but you just said you would use that to tell if it was a demon. So are you using radiometric dating? Are you considering that valid when you use it to define a demon or not?
To see how old it was.
Okay. But
And
that's
they're
not
6,000 years
diagnostic taxonomically. We don't use dating to define what an organism is.
Yeah, but the dinosaurs. How long ago were the dinosaurs here?
They showed up around like 250 million years ago.
The Earth isn't that old, and there's no proof.
I think there is a pretty significant amount of proof. So when we know the Earth is at least I think like 4.8 billion years old is the estimate.
But it's not.
Okay, so do you have a counter argument against radiometric dating of igneous rock?
It's not real. Everything, your entire job is fake.
So that's a claim. That's a claim. Do you have
No.
evidence to support your claim, or are you just going to make a claim? Because a claim isn't
It's
an
not
argument.
real.
Okay. Do you want to? I mean, we can have a productive conversation about that. But
I mean,
No.
listening to your voice is kind of hurting me, so I don't know about that one.
okay, buddy.
You should maybe go get your testosterone checked instead of like talking about fake whatever these things are,
Actually,
dinosaurs.
really warms my heart that you say I should get my testosterone checked. That made me probably the happiest I've been in the last few weeks. Genuinely,
Okay.
I could start giving you my estrogen.
that's not a bad idea. I can't believe I'm a passoid. Anyway,
I don't know what any of those words mean, but you
Yeah.
you sound
I
really annoying.
infer.
It's good. That means you haven't spent time
I'm
on...
inferred. Okay. Anyway, a dinosaur is an animal within Archosauria, which is a vertebrate with 2 holes in front of its eyes and 2 holes behind its eyes. Do you agree that there are animals that exist around today which are archosaurs?
They're muted.
Oh, he muted himself. Okay, I'm getting a lot of requests to get rid of All right. Anyway, dinosaurs definitely exist because there are animals around today that fit the definition of dinosaur, which are the birds, of course. Not the crocodiles, but the birds. Were Arthroplura reptiles or dinosaurs? Are they bugs? Arthroplura is an arthropod, and they could probably bite. I think they were chelicerates. Yeah, I think he was going to look up what the definition of dinosaur was and then try and argue. Yes, usually what you have to do to win an argument against someone like that is just let them talk. My roommate's favorite dinosaur is Spinosaurus aegypticus. Acrocanthosaurus.
I don't know if it is anymore.
Okay.
It was my favorite for a while. I think I like the little nose biters better, though.
Let's talk about the Gar.
The Gar?
You want us to talk about Gar?
We just got a request to
Our
talk
other
about
roommate
Gar.
wants us to talk about Gar.
I live with 5 people.
Only 4 now. Oh, kind of 5. Yeah.
Gar is our roommate.
Yeah,
Get
basically.
real. Get real. Cryoloposaurus is really cool. I think Acrocanthosaurus is my favorite dinosaur primarily because of how much we know about its behavior. Acrocanthosaurus is gas. You're so correct. Actually, technically, it's a solid, although it is kind of breaking down into a gas. Maybe protofeathers, but no direct evidence currently. Feathers, but no direct evidence currently. What's the earliest dinosaur specimen we found, like the oldest one? Eoraptor lunensis is currently the oldest specimen accepted to be a dinosaur.
For the person talking about feathers, we actually do have dinosaurs with like full proper
With
feathers.
full feather preservation, panaceous and everything. All right, let's talk about Gar. And by Gar, I mean specifically their scales. There is direct. I thought you were saying there's not direct evidence of feathers, and I was about to pull up images of Sinosauropteryx.
Yeah.
So let's talk about
Sinosauropteryx is cool.
Gar, particularly the scales of Gar.
Telling me a Gar licked this bread?
So alligator gar scales are super interesting because they are osteoderms.
Well, they were talking about T-Rex specifically.
Yeah, no, we don't have any direct evidence for or against scales in T-Rex. We have a little bit of both. There are some small skin impressions of T-Rex that show scales, but they're not in a part of the body that would be feathered in a feathered dinosaur. And T-Rex probably had a feathered ancestor. What's your favorite museum in the U.S. for dinosaur exhibits? My favorite one that I've been to is probably the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Closest relative to the mosasaur is the Komodo dragon. It's any varanid or any python, depending on how freaky you want to get with it. But I'm a proponent of the varanoid mosasaur hypothesis. Field Museum is great, but I've never been there, so I can't vouch for them.
The round penguin, penguins are equally.
Penguins are dinosaurs.
Yeah, they're
penguins
dinosaurs, but they are the same amount of relation to other dinosaurs as all birds are.
All right, let's talk about
gar.
Do
you know, before we get to that,
okay.
Do you know what the things are that predate the predate the kind of split off of avian dinosaurs?
What do you mean?
Like what the common ancestor is that we have, or like best common ancestor that is like right before or the closest thing to the split off point of avian dinosaurs?
I mean, when you get to like really, really close up stuff, it can be bizarre. Generally, it's considered to be troodontids.
Oh, interesting.
They're considered to be the closest. They're their sister taxon to aves, or aviale. But I mean, like, aviale is where I start defining birds in the sense of things that look like birds.
Yeah.
In terms of stuff that doesn't have tailbones, the closest thing that has tailbones to the things that don't have tailbones is these guys.
Huh.
The omnivoro pterigids.
The omnivora.
Okay, let's get real about alligator gar
Sorry
scales.
about that.
No, you're fine. Alligator gar scales are super interesting because they are convergent with, or maybe just atavistic, which is to say that this could be a reactivation of a gene that was present in them for a long time, or a trait evolved convergently. Because alligator gar, just like the fish that I spent basically all day looking at today, megalithes, have little bits of bone in their scale. Megalithes is a giant predatory fish. It's about 3 feet long, but they could potentially get bigger. It's 370 million years old about. The one that I was working on is from the Catskill Formation. Particularly, I think it was from the Red Hill fossil site. But just like alligator gar, they have these kind of diamond-shaped bony scales all over their body, where the parts of the scales that are overlapped by another scale are just kind of raw bone that is porous and allows for blood vessels to flow through. And the how many F-150s long is megalithes? How long is the F-150 in meters? It's about 1/6 of an F-150, the average megalithiid.
How many hamburgers long is that?
Were you born into a religion and became atheist, or have you been atheist since birth? I was born into a religion. I was actually born on a commune. Well, I wasn't born on a commune. I was raised on a commune. I was born in the U.S. But anyway, alligator gar scales are just very similar to megalithiid scales in that they have a section of covered bone that is covered by the cosmine part of another scale. And then they have the exposed cosmine part, which is the part that like goes against the water and it's nice and smooth and it's hydrodynamic and stuff. Yeah, so that's a cool bit of convergent evolution for the person who wanted me to talk about gar. I won't, Massive, don't worry. What period of time do you think had the weirdest life forms?
Ooh. There's some pretty weird early stuff.
There is definitely some weird early stuff, but it's normal amongst itself. I think the time period that had the widest range of like the widest standard okay. So the thing is with the Cambrian, basically everything was going crazy. But in the early Paleogene, there was really normal looking stuff and also really, really weird looking stuff. And I think that contrast makes the early Paleogene the most interesting. Dinosaur of the day for tomorrow maybe is
I was gonna say
Ceratopsian.
Torosaurus.
Torosaurus is not bad.
That's the one Torosaurus, I think, is cool because every time I think of them, I think about drawing one with gauges in its frill holes.
Jurassic or Cretaceous? I prefer the Cretaceous. I would like to do work in the Cretaceous someday. I've never actually done proper research on it outside of paleoclimate stuff. Speaking of paleoclimate stuff, I'm actually going to talk about a literature review that I just did, and might end up getting published. Depends on how much I can clean it up. Might not get published in a journal, but it could end up as just a little supplemental piece or a plaque on a museum exhibit because there's some more interesting things about it. I'm just going to pop in the summary right now because there's a lot of really in-depth, crazy stuff here. What's some civilian paleontology someone can do from home? There's a lot of help that can be done. There's a lot of museums that have projects where they're trying to digitize specimen labels and they just need people to sit and read the writing of old people that a computer can't do. And so there are museums that'll run specimen digitization projects where you will look at what the label of a specimen says, type out what that label says, and then submit it. And that can be really helpful for museum projects. It's kind of grueling, but it is incredibly helpful for museum researchers. What do we know about the Dimetrodon? It's my favorite. Dimetrodon is not a dinosaur, but that doesn't make it any less cool. It is one of the most awesome animals ever. Dimetrodon is a synapsid, so it's actually very closely related to modern mammals. And do we know if Torosaurus had skin over the gauge holes? Yes.
Yeah,
it
the
definitely
gauges. The gauges was a specific idea I had for like an Anthroporosaurus.
did. Yeah.
They definitely had skin over those.
But anyway, what was I saying?
J.K. Allard, we have some videos up on the YouTube.
Yeah,
if you're
go check out the
interested in
YouTube.
those.
There was a guy who didn't believe in evolution. That I think that video is probably up now. I started uploading it at the start of the live.
Yeah, it should be, especially since you have a Ethernet connection.
Yeah. 3
And is
views
that
15 minutes ago. Are there any
58 minutes
comments?
ago.
58 minutes ago. Are there any comments or discussions on this? No.
Nope, not yet.
Hey, you know what? That's all right. It is 45 minutes of me talking to maybe the most stupid.
Yes, the YouTube is
Yeah,
Dryptosaurus.
the YouTube is Dryptosaurus. It's also linked in my TikTok bio, so if you click on my page, you should be able to see it. All my Monster Hunter stuff is up there, and all my old streams are up there as well. How do you feel about the term dinosaur as a catch-all layman's term for not lots of things not dinosaur? It upsets me a little bit more than people using pterodactyl to refer to all pterosaurs, because pterodactyl isn't a valid all pterosaurs, because pterodactyl isn't a valid scientific term anymore, but dinosaur is. So it gets really confusing when we're using something in the research that is used in research papers to refer to something that is different from what that scientific term actually means. I think semantic widening is fine in a lot of cases, but I want to try and keep it out of talks about science, because when you use that term broadly to explain to people like what a dinosaur is, and then halfway through teaching them you have to explain to them you lied to them in the first few sentences of what you're saying, it's difficult. I play the Isle a lot. I play a little bit of Primal Carnage.
You've played Path of Titans.
I have played
right?
Path of Titans, yeah. I play with my boyfriend sometimes. Do you have a spouse or child? I do not have a spouse. I do have a partner, and I don't have a child. Yeah, Massive, I'm probably not gonna... I will send you the Discord later tonight. You should go to bed if it's that late for you. But I will get to you, I promise, and I'll try and yeah. How are we able to tell what the climate may have been like millions of years ago? Now I get to talk about
Oh
my
my
research.
gosh.
Holy shit! Holy shit!
What a great
okay,
segue.
okay. So I'm going to read you the summary of my literature review that I just did. And it's broadly about interannual, which is year to year as opposed to season climate variation for the last 252 million years, mainly focusing on the Mesozoic and Permian. El Nino Southern Oscillation is a weather phenomenon which has existed for at least 252 million years. Recent literature has proposed, however, that the ENSO is at least as old as the end Permian and was the cause of the Permo-Triassic mass extinction, the most severe loss of biodiversity in geological history. This review was created with the aim of evaluating this claim, corroborating the predictions of past literature regarding Mesozoic ENSO anomalies with climate proxies for ENSO variation, and identifying necessary areas of further research. The main points of evidence for an Enso-caused Permo-Triassic extinction are simulation-based and not currently corroborated with tangible climate proxies. However, the anoxic event at the beginning of the Changxingian is derived from the use of climate proxies and correlates with the model-derived La Nina period proposed. The same is true for simulation-derived Mesozoic SST anomaly increases and proxy-derived Mesozoic anoxic events. Volcanism has been previously attributed to these events as explanation, but this does not necessarily contradict the hypothesis that Enso is responsible for the changes seen. It is known that volcanic eruption impacts the behavior of intra-annual climate variation, but long-term volcanic effects on Enso are under-researched. Broadly, further research ought to be done in regards to long-term Paleozoic climate variation, early Mesozoic climate variation, the effects of mountain geography on Enso dynamics, and the impact of volcanic activity on global climate systems over the long term. Understanding these areas would allow for a much stronger understanding of the causality of the end Permian mass extinctions and the three major Mesozoic anoxic events.
And then the full thing is like 23 pages.
Yeah, the full thing is 23 pages long, not including references.
Oh, not including references. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Are dinosaurs like raptors theropods? Yeah. The raptors are all theropods. Theropods are basically everything that eats meat and walks on two legs, plus some weird outliers, and minus some weird outliers in the other groups. Like the earliest sauropodomorphs also ate meat and walked on two legs, but they're closely related to the long-necked ones as opposed to the theropods. Yes, well, not necessarily that El Nino bonked those dinos, more so the proposed we know very little about how big volcanic activity affects El Nino specifically, and El Nino can contribute to a ton of different huge biological changes in the way that ecosystems operate. For example, it can almost entirely and rapidly shift the population dynamics of certain groups of plankton. And so when we look at that, we look at the chemistry and also the microfossil content of those soils, and that in the past indicates has been accepted to indicate extreme volcanic activity. However, if you get extreme volcanic activity to the north and south, you get global changes in some capacity to El Nino systems. And there's also convincing evidence for the Permo-Triassic extinction, particularly, that El Nino was acting weird at that time. Like you had multiple year-long La Ninas and really intense multiple year-long El Ninos, where it would be like a summer for 1 year, and then it would be like a cold winter for 5 years, and then it would bounce back and forth. I'm not mad, I'm just perturbed. I go live pretty late at night where I am as well. But if you miss a live, fret not. Don't feel like you have to stay for the whole thing. You can leave a comment on my YouTube and I'll try and get to your answers. Definitely just go subscribe to my YouTube and you can find all the old lives there in a playlist. Please don't lose sleep over my content. It will be there for you when you wake up, I promise. How would you feel if we found a dinosaur with pronated wrists, upright posture, and a tail drag?
That would be very strange.
Well, we wouldn't find a dinosaur because those behaviors, those traits are impossible to exist unless you had a hyper-derived group of dinosaurs that was able to undo all of those traits atavistically, which would be interesting. I mean, it's theoretically possible. It would really mess up a lot of science.
Yeah.
But it would mess with our understanding of evolution, but not necessarily our understanding of what a dinosaur is, if that makes sense. It would be the big mystery would be, why did it evolve these traits? Welcome up again, Lesbian Dark Strider.
That would be Preposterosaurus.
Yeah.
Hello, I have yet another question.
Awesome. Go ahead. What's your question?
Okay, so is there any evidence of dinosaurs having adaptations in a period of time that may have been colder than another one? Do we have fossils of dinosaurs that would show maybe they had thicker feathers or anything?
We don't really have loads of data for closely related dinosaurs across long periods of time. Pretty much every dinosaur we have is a chronospecies, which is to say it's defined not only by its unique morphology, but also by its position in time. So we don't have that tight year-to-year data on feather size variation that you would need for analysis of birds, for example. We can get a specimen of a bird every 10 years and get an understanding of how their feathers are changing over that course of time. We can do that also for mollusks in the fossil record, but dinosaurs are really quite rare compared to other groups of animals. You can do that sort of research if you're a marine invertebrate paleontologist, like Dr. Jocelyn Sessa, who I'm a big fan of. And she does research specifically on marine mollusks, and I think some freshwater mollusks. And you can do really good year-to-year research on those mollusks because they just fossilize like crazy. They have really hard shells and they tend to preserve very frequently. But preserving a dinosaur as a fossil is a freak accident. So you can't really collect the sort of data from dinosaurs that you would need to get that information. Did it happen? I'm sure you had periods where it was like Darwin's finches, where you had dinosaurs living in a climate that, got really cold and the ones with less feathers died out. And then it got really warm and the ones with more feathers died out. And you had sort of, oscillation in feather thickness for the population.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming up. Have a great night.
You too.
What is the most interesting dinosaur? Acrocanthosaurus atochensis, because it's the coolest and the best all of the time. We got the round penguin and Miles up again. Welcome up the round penguin, and then I'll get to you, Miles, just a sec. Hello, the round penguin. What's your question?
Hi. I have 2 questions this time.
Sure, go ahead.
Number 1, where do you get your art from?
I draw.
Oh, well, it's really good.
Thank you. Yeah,
Awesome.
I do my digital art in Procreate, and I do all of my my physical art that you can see on my page with just pen and ink.
What's great. Hold up. So your YouTube is just the same thing as your TikTok, yes?
Yeah,
Same
if you click on my TikTok profile picture, you can go and there's a link in the bio that says YouTube.
And my other question, you didn't finish this one. I just wanted like 100% closure.
Sure.
So you said the Dimetrodon wasn't considered a dinosaur. Is it more of
Yeah.
a reptile, a mammal? What is it?
It's a synapsid, so it's not really a reptile or a mammal. It's more closely related to mammals than it is to reptiles. But we define reptiles as anything within Sauropsidia, which is the things with 2 holes behind the skulls in their head, or behind, not the skulls in their head, 2 holes in the back of their skull. And synapsids are anything with just 1 hole in the back of their skull. Dimetrodon is a synapsid, so it's not a reptile. And mammals are also a kind of synapsid. So Dimetrodon is if you have like, if you have your grandfather and your sibling, Dimetrodon would be like your cousin. Where your grandfather says, all of my children are synapsids. And your parent says, all of my children are mammals. But then you have a cousin, and your cousin is Dimetrodon.
Ah, so he's a bit of an odd mix.
Yeah, well, it's a synapsid that's not a mammal. And, pretty much all the synapsids that are around today are mammals. But there are many different groups of extinct synapsids that don't fit into being mammals. So they're just synapsids.
I'm going to share a bit here. The only reason I remember the Dimetrodon so fondly is I used to have this tiny little plastic toy. He was my favorite.
Dimetrodon is really cool. I also used to have a plastic Dimetrodon.
They're just like pocket-sized Spinosaurus.
They're kind of like Arizonosaurus as well. I love all the little weird sailback creatures that we get in the fossil record. They are really, really amazing.
It was nice to get some closure on that subject. All right.
Of course. Thanks for coming.
I don't know how to leave.
Oh, I can just drop you. Who is the foremost scientifically accurate dinosaur artist right now? Shoot, that's a really difficult decision. I think Brian Eng is really interesting because he's really, really committed to speculation. In the same way that C.M. Kozeman is. I think C.M. Kozeman takes it a little far, not to his detriment. I think he produces amazing art, but some of his stuff is very intentionally weird because it's aimed to push the boundaries of paleo art. Brian Eng is sitting a little bit closer to that middle edge. I think Joshua Knoop is really amazing as well, and I think Joshua Knoop does so much research on what he does, and it's really amazing.
Joshua Knoop makes some good art.
Yeah. If you ask me that question, in the early 2000s or the early 2010s, I would certainly say Fred Wyrum. Not because he was more accurate, but because he was my favorite paleo artist back then. I was a huge Fred Wyrum head. Welcome up, Miles. What's your question?
Okay, so my question is, crocodiles have been like basically the same the whole time they've existed, right?
Well, not particularly. There are crocodiles that existed, or crocodilians, maybe even just
Yes.
pseudoseuchians, that existed during the Mesozoic and earlier times that look a lot like the modern crocodiles of today. But just like horseshoe crabs, those are different species that are related to, but not necessarily identical to the living crocodiles.
Okay, because I was just thinking, like I'd seen fossils and stuff that looked a lot like crocodiles do now, but they were really, really old. So I was wondering how something could have been around for that long, and none of the prey it hunted had like changed enough that it was forced to change, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so if we just look at like crocodiloids, like the crocodilians and their allies, they represent kind of the modern crocodilians kind of just represent the ones that survived. Um, they didn't really need to change so much because their niche didn't change. They are predators that sit below the surface of the water and wait for something large to come by and drink before they bite it. Things have needed to drink at water for as long as things have lived on land. And so, as long as there's a body of water large enough to house a crocodilian, they're going to be able to do relatively similar things. That's not to say there's no variation. You don't find anything that looks exactly like a Nile crocodile, in the Maastrichtian. They've only been around for about 10 million years. If you look at things like the Micoseuchids, they're a group that are exceptionally closely related to the modern Nile crocodiles. But not only are they basically all extinct as of, I think, 3,000 years ago, they are a little bit different morphologically, and they're much, much older. So basically, what I'm trying to get at is the reason that you find a lot of animals that look similar to modern crocodilians in the fossil record is because there used to be a huge diversity of crocodilian body plans that existed across all of geological time. But particularly in recent times, selective pressure has caused a lot of those diverse crocodilian body plans to go extinct. And so while you find a bunch of the crocodilians from that really typical looking crocodilian lineage, there are loads of different groups of crocodilians, like the Micoseuchids, which had their legs long and directly under them. The even like kind of crazier ones, like the Pristichampsus or any of the herbivorous crocodiles. Those ones just happened to go extinct, and we don't find them around today. So really only a very small proportion of crocodiles in the fossil record, or crocodilians in the fossil record, look like our modern crocodiles. And that's because they're the ones that haven't been forced to change over such a rapid period of time that they go extinct.
Gotcha. And then I have one more question. Since like things becoming fossils is so rare, would you say we found most of the fossils that are around at this point?
Absolutely not. Fossils are not, well, things becoming fossilized are rare, but so much stuff has died over the course of geological time. So even if fossils, if one in every like 10 million organisms fossilized, you would still have too many organisms to dig up in 10 lifetimes. There are so many things that have lived and died on Earth that I don't think we'll ever really run out of fossils. Now, will we run out of fossil fuels? That's another question, because that's a very specific kind of fossil that hasn't been produced throughout all of geological time because it's unique to the Carboniferous and Carboniferous conditions. So yes, fossil fuels are non-renewable. I wanted to address that, but fossils themselves are incredibly common in the ground. They are rare to form, but the Earth is so old that fossils are around with a good amount of consistency.
because the numbers that you hear about like how old the Earth are, it's kind of hard to like conceptualize how old that actually is
Oh yeah.
because it sort of just sounds like a big number.
It is a very big number, and it's hard to really wrap your head around that. Um, because and that I think trips a lot of people up when they're understanding evolution, because they think of these things as happening in a perceivable human scale sequence. But no, so many of these species are changing on a time scale that the entire human race could live and die before we see the emergence of another species. That's not to say that we can't observe evolution on a modern time scale, because there are situations where it happens quickly, punctuated equilibrium and all that. But you know, this is an insane length of time, and it's the techniques we have to use to observe it are not familiar to the average person, or even make sense to the average person. It takes a lot of really explaining to understand how we survey geological time.
Yeah, I kind of struggle to understand stuff with evolution because a little over a year ago I was like full on young Earth creationist.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I've been in your shoes. I was raised pretty intensely religious on a commune. But fortunately, my parents weren't as into it as a lot of people around me were, and so as I got into science, I was able to kind of comfortably distance myself from that. But I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I'm very proud of you for making that leap and trying to really understand.
Yeah, because because I live in Alabama, so there's like no one to talk to. Like
Mm,
even in like we have biology, right? Because I'm a freshman in high school. We have
yeah.
biology, and there is like the biology. It's to the point the biology teacher stands up and says, "Yeah, so I'm not going to teach any of this. Just do the worksheet." Because the biology teacher that we have doesn't believe in evolution.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely get that. That's the education in a lot of the U.S. is really, really messed up, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah,
But fortunately, there are a lot of resources, dedicated to understanding that sort of thing online. So if you really are into learning about evolution and evolutionary concepts, I can't really name anything good off the top of my head, but shoot me a DM and to remind me, and I will try to make a video at some point compiling, like a list of resources that you and other people could take a look at to get an understanding of those like really basic, essential evolutionary concepts.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, of
Because
course. Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I'm trying, I when I was a kid, like I'm still a kid, but when I was like a younger kid, I had this book that was called like a dinosaur atlas, and it was a
Hmm.
map of where like dinosaur fossils have been found. Because I was like a big dinosaur kid, and
Yeah.
my parents they used to like sit down and read with me. They made me throw the book away because it mentioned evolution as the origin of dinosaurs on the first page, and
Oh
I get
man.
sad about that sometimes because it was a cool book.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I'm sorry about that, man.
Yeah,
That's really hard to have, people close to you shoot down your interests in science and dinosaurs specifically. I mean, that didn't happen from my parents, but it did happen from people that I respected like that. And so it is a really difficult thing to happen to you, especially when you're so young.
well, thank you for answering my questions. I will send you that DM
Yeah, of course.
for this. I'm probably gonna go to bed now because it's 11 p.m. and I have school tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, me
Uh,
too. Yeah.
all right, thank you.
All right. See ya. Have a great night, man.
You too.
Why is Fran your fave? Because we have some really excellent behavioral data on her species, because it leaves behind a lot of fossil footprints. All right, I'm going to try and clear
Um,
out. Oh,
oh, sorry. You have a friend who has a trans cockatiel, right?
yes, I do have a
Yes.
friend who has a
Okay.
trans
I wanted to make
cockatiel.
sure I was getting that right because I was telling people about that in chat.
Yes, I do have a friend with a transgender cockatiel. Um, it's a cockatiel that was born male and then just at some point spontaneously switched sex. You know, she was born male and she had completely recognizable male sexual organs at when she came out of the egg. But as she aged, she took on the female plumage, and she got CT'd or X-rayed recently, and they found that her sexual organs were much more typically in line with the position of the position of them on a female cockatiel.
That's cool.
Didn't have to pay for surgery or nothing.
That's awesome.
Arker, all right, welcome up, Game Boy 98.
Yo,
What's up?
so my question was, first off, that was an interesting thing. Do you think that's the cockatoo? Do you think that's a genetic issue or?
I don't know if it would be genetic or related to like natal hormone levels. I know a lot of stuff that influences like brain development and body development isn't necessarily genetic so much as it has to do with the conditions of the egg when it's being formed. So it could have to do with stuff like the hormone levels of the parent that wouldn't necessarily be consistent child to child, because that cockatiel, not all of its siblings are like that. In fact, it's the only one out of all of its siblings, but obviously it didn't come from the same egg as its other siblings. And we know for a fact that that sort of behavior doesn't really have to do a lot with environment in birds so much as it has to do with like environment in fish. Like birds don't ever really like choose to have that happen. It kind of just is a thing that occurs to them based on something developmentally.
Because I do know fishes can change gender.
Yeah, they can. Fish can change their sex. They do it all the time in response to environmental conditions.
Do you think dinosaurs had the same issue as they were in eggs?
Yeah, I don't think it's so unreasonable to suggest that dinosaurs, were all egg-laying organisms, and I can imagine that for the dinosaurs that took time to develop in the egg, if there were certain hormonal conditions met, you could get something similar to that where either a dinosaur would come out with non-sex specific features, or it would look natally like one sex and then develop into another as it aged, because brains and bodies are incredibly complex, and the way that they interact developmentally is unpredictable and very interesting.
Okay. The question that I have is, do like dinosaurs do what other like mammals do, in the sense of when it comes to babies, where like if another male lion wants a female and kills the female kids in order to have more kids, do dinosaurs do that?
We don't really have a lot of evidence of complex social structures in dinosaurs. Reptiles in general don't tend to form super complex social groups, and at least with modern birds, it doesn't really tend to be the case that parents and children spend more than one like season of their life together. Like they'll be together for a year, and then the children will disperse. It's called dispersive migration, where the kids will fly away after they're independent. Or sometimes, in dinosaurs, we have evidence that a lot of dinosaurs are what we call precocial babies. So they'll come out of the egg and they're already kind of independent. They can eat things that they can catch, and they don't really need any parental care. So for that, I definitely don't think so. But it is an interesting thing to bring up. I don't think we have analogous behavior for that outside of mammals. It mostly seems to be a mammal exclusive thing, and in extinct mammals even, we don't really have evidence for or against it. So it's really up in the air. Behavioral data is difficult to find with dinosaurs. We're kind of limited to the few things that we can confirm in regards to like learning about what dinosaurs would have behaved like.
Oh, cool. I never knew that. That sounds interesting. Now, have you? I know this is kind of off topic, but still with dinosaurs. Have you played Pokemon at least? Because I'm adding to the fossil Pokemon that they.
Yeah, I used to play Pokemon the card game, but I have not played a Pokemon game in quite a while.
I've played a few of the Pokemon
game in quite a while.
I've played a few of the Pokemon games.
All right, my roommate knows about Pokemon more than I do.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, because the reason why I asked is because how accurate are those fossils? Like, what are those Pokemon based on? Like,
Well, yeah, that's definitely something we can talk about.
Yeah. Okay.
I know there's a not dinosaur. There's a pterosaur named after
Aerodactyls.
Aerodactyl, right?
Yeah. There's a pterosaur that in real life that was named after the Pokemon because it supposedly looked a little bit like it. But here, where are the fossil Pokemon here? Where's the list?
I've got the fossils.
Okay. So
There you go.
Kabuto. What is Kabuto?
Kabuto is a like.
It's a trilobite.
Yeah.
It's a trilobite invertebrate, and it evolves into this thing, which
Yeah.
kind of looks like, it definitely looks like a trilobite. The one thing they did get really right with
Well, it's more of a
Kabutops.
horseshoe crab.
Oh, is
It's
it?
got the well, yeah. I mean, it's got like the horseshoe crab tail.
Oh, you know what? You are kind of right. This looks a little bit also like a Ziphosurin. Okay, okay. Any leftovers left behind by Kabutops are consumed by other Pokemon. Looks like, okay, it's a swimmer here. So that tells me maybe more that it's a trilobite. But Kabutops in particular seems to be a mix between trilobites and Ziphosurins, which are two kinds of ancient arthropods that existed, around like Cambrian and up until I think around the Devonian. Ziphosurins still exist today, but trilobites are extinct. So that's Kabuto.
Oh yeah, Omanyte is
an ammonite.
Is an ammonite.
Particularly, Omanyte is a benthic ammonite, which is interesting. It might not even be an ammonite, because there are some early relatives of ammonites that did not yet evolve, powered swimming. So, for example, stuff like the earliest cephalopods, they were like, the primitive nautiloids had shells that weren't yet light enough to swim up and down in the water column. And so they were basically, they looked like ammonites, but they only existed on the seafloor. They weren't like pushing themselves around or controlling their buoyancy or anything because they have those big heavy shells. And Omanyte seems to be that sort of thing. Just looking at how it sits in its art. Aerodactyl.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what regular one looks like, and the
Oh
Mega
my
one.
God.
So,
Mega evolutions aren't worth looking at here.
So Aerodactyl is kind of a mix between a lot of different kinds of pterosaurs. The top half of its jaw is very clearly inspired by Pteranodon. Its jaw is very clearly inspired by Pteranodontids, which have these like big toothless hooked beaks that they use to catch fish. Although Pteranodonted beaks aren't like hooked down, they're more like swooped up. The lower jaw is more typical of what we would expect to see in like Tropeognathus, where there's a bunch of teeth in it. So that's interesting. It has the correct, actually, the one thing that's interesting about Aerodactyl is that it's missing a pteroid bone. Instead of having the three fingers of its hand pointing away and then having a pteroid bone coming from its wrist up to its shoulder that supports the front membrane of its wing, it doesn't have anything there. So it doesn't have a pteroid bone. I don't know what a scientist would classify Aerodactyl as. It does have that like kind of caudal shape on its tail, the like paddle. Lileep is a crinoid. That's what they are. Lileep is a crinoid, which are a group of marine invertebrates. They've existed a long time, since like the Ordovician.
I thought it was a fossil.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a living fossil.
Fossil Pokemon.
Shieldon. What is Shieldon?
I'm not sure.
Oh, it's a Ceratopsian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Shieldon is a Ceratopsian.
I was thinking of a different Pokemon.
Yeah. Shieldon might be the last one I go over, but I do enjoy doing this.
This is maybe a worthwhile video to do.
Shieldon particularly looks like an early Ceratopsian because it doesn't have a nose horn or post-orbital horns. And then Bastiodon, at least is Mega Bastiodon a thing? No.
Nope.
But Bastiodon has these two like sideways facing orbital horns. And then it has two horns on the top of its head. I think I went over what Ceratopsian, like where I put Bastiodon within Ceratopsinae. And I think I had it with the Chasmosaurians. Yeah, I had it with Chasmosaurians. So there's that.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, this might be a worthwhile video.
Yeah, I might make a full video going over all the fossil Pokemon and where I would put them. That was a good idea.
Yeah, because there's in the oldest game Sword and Shield, there's a thing you could connect two fossils together to make a new Pokemon, and that is a reference to early scavenging fossils where the term that they used to get hunt dinosaur bones.
The paleontologists, yeah.
Yes, the paleontologists used to
Oh, that's
mix
so
out
funny.
used to mix bones with other dinosaurs, thinking that it was that living. It was thinking that it was part of that dinosaur.
Yeah.
That's
So
so funny. I
so
love
what we
that that's a
call that,
thing.
yeah, what we call that now is we call a specimen that comes from multiple animals mixed together chimera, like the Greek myth chimera, which was like the lion with three heads or whatever. Um, because sometimes when you find a bunch of fossils in one fossil bed, you make the mistake of assuming that they come from the same organism when they don't.
Yeah.
And that happened with Dakotaraptor fairly recently. And it maybe happened with a fossil lizard that was called Xenodon or Xenodens, but yeah, so it's still a thing that happens. It's much less severe than in like the 1800s, but paleontologists still do make mistakes, and usually they get called out by their peers. So that stuff never makes it to publication, but sometimes people do submit stuff for publication without knowing that their fossils are chimeric.
Hmm. Now, before I go, my last question is: do you know? Okay, I live in California. Is there like a place I could go to find like shark teeth or like tiny little bone fossils? Like,
I asked this question at one point.
like through a lake or a river?
Yeah, I asked this question at one point. I used to live in California a little bit when I was younger. But there's a website here that says Sharktooth Hill, California. You're mostly going to find marine fossils, but in the winter, there's a blog here called the Coastal Paleontologist talking about California shark teeth. Where in the winter, because the tides are higher, you're going to get more exposure, and shark teeth will be more common on the beach. So I would say, I think Sharktooth Hill in California. I don't know how close that is to you. California is kind of a difficult state to find fossils in, unfortunately, because it's West Coast. But Sharktooth Hill will probably be your best bet from what I can see here.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for the chat. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Game Boy 98. Have a great night.
You too.
Yeah. Is there a religion that lets you believe in God but also believe in the evolution theory? You can self-define your religion.
Yeah, religion's kind of mutable.
Yeah, it's up to you to define what you believe in and what you're convinced of. And you can practice however you want. Religion is really a you decision. I think that was everybody. I think Game Boy 98 was the last one that was in there when I said I was. Oh, we had Josh. Let's let Josh up, and then Josh is going to be the last guest of the night, and then I have to go sleepy time, or maybe play some Monster Hunter and then go sleepy time. All right, Josh, what's your question?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Oh,
a specific claim, or if you just say.
Oh, okay. You have to. Sorry, you have to keep the app open when you talk, because if you swipe away from the app, I can't hear you. So could you ask your question again?
My apologies. Okay.
No, you're fine.
Yes. Okay, I'm back. Do you study a specific clade, or are you just a dinosaur guy in general?
Yeah, the specific group of dinosaurs I study are actually a group of fossil birds, but I say dinosaur because birds are dinosaurs, and more people are going to be interested when I say I study dinosaurs than I study Galoenceres and their evolution after the Cretaceous Paleogene mass extinction. But yeah, so most of my research, if not all of it, focuses on ancestral character trait reconstruction of Galoenceres using both fossil and living specimens.
Excellent. Okay, neat. And I was also just curious as well, when dealing with extinct, I don't know, just extinct animals in general, do you generally push for a non-ranked taxonomy in this case, or is there a push for ranked taxonomy in dinosaurs and
I'm
extinct animals in general?
I'm a huge cladistics proponent, even with living animals. I think ranked taxonomy gets so difficult because evolution doesn't follow rules. Evolution doesn't have ranks in mind because there's no mind behind it. So yeah, I think cladistics is for sure the way to go, where you just have nodes of common ancestry that you can lay out on a tree. Because oh my gosh, dinosaur taxonomy in particular gets revised so often that it's just difficult to keep any sort of ranking, because you can have things like families becoming genera and the genus gets pulled back because you find so many species that now you have to designate like subgenera, which are then basically just genera, and it's a huge mess. So cladistics is definitely the way to go with dinosaurs.
Gotcha. I was just curious because I deal with extant. I deal with beetles specifically, so like all extant stuff. So it's mostly pushing for ranked taxonomy. So
yeah,
thought that was interesting.
I think we certainly have different perspectives on the issue, and I don't think it's a bad idea to do ranked taxonomy. I think it's different tools are useful for different people, but for me specifically, unranked taxonomy is primarily what I use.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I'm just kind of stuck in the realm of ranked taxonomy, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
I was also just curious as well.
Oh, you closed out of the app again.
Or maybe just disconnected for a sec.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm back. I meant to immediately look up that bird you mentioned. Was it Galloenceres?
Galloenceres is the clade that includes all the birds that I work with.
Excellent.
Yeah,
okay. Is there any chance you could type that in the chat? Because I went to go try to look it up in Google.
I think if you type in fowl on Wikipedia, it redirects you to Galloenceres.
Excellent. Okay, I'll look into that. That seems interesting. So
yeah, it's the group of birds that includes modern like ducks and geese, modern chickens, and also the gastrornithids, which are like these big two-legged ground birds from South America that showed up right after the dinosaurs went extinct, and then the mirahuns, which are another group of like terrestrial running bird. And it also includes Pelagornithidae, which are the false-toothed birds. They're a group of seabirds that have beaks that are kind of like the beak is covered in keratin, but the bone under the beak grows out like a tooth, and the beak grows around it. So they kind of have false teeth in their mouth.
Neat.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you answering my questions. Sorry if I were constantly leaving the live.
Hey, no, you're fine. You're fine. It's difficult to do this technically. I know how it is.
Of course. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Yeah, of course. You have a good night too. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
There was someone asking about dragons being considered dinosaurs. I mistyped when I responded to you, but dragons are a pretty kind of vague group in terms of how they're depicted. They vary culture to culture, and dragon is something that has kind of been it's a term that's kind of been used to group a whole bunch of different things from a whole bunch of different places. And because dragon isn't a taxonomic term, they can't really be considered dinosaurs. And also, most of the depictions of
embarrassing happened to me during it. Go check out my YouTube. It's linked in my bio. It's also just Dryptosaurus. It's the first result if you type up Dryptosaurus with an I, not with a Y like the real animal. And I appreciate everybody who came and gave gifts and supported and chatted, because I would not be able to do this without you. You guys are awesome. And thank you again for coming by. Have a great night, y'all.